The house sat just above Northridge, tucked into the quiet folds of the hills where the city's sprawl gave way to older trees and winding roads. It was built in 1968, modern for its time, but with a strange asymmetry to its layout, as if parts had been added hastily, one room bleeding awkwardly into another. Richard Pryor bought the house in the early 80s at the height of his fame. It was here, among the stucco walls and the scent of eucalyptus, that he tried to find peace in the whirlwind of his life. In late August 2023, Amanda and Jalen Morris, a married couple in their late 30s, moved in. They weren't celebrities, just fortunate. Amanda worked as a producer for a niche podcast network, and Jalen was an architect who made most of his income doing quiet renovations for luxury clients. They bought the house for well below market value, an off-market deal that came through a friend of a friend. The listing agent told them the seller wanted someone calm, grounded to have it. No open house, no bidding war, just a signature and a key. Amanda had grown up watching old VHS tapes of Pryor with her father. When she learned it had once belonged to him, she felt a strange tug of nostalgia, as if buying the house would restore a part of her childhood. Jalen was more interested in the structure itself. The split-level living room, the burnt orange tile in the downstairs bathroom, and the wide, oddly placed mirror in the den. He mentioned that mirror a lot in the first few weeks. "It's set too low," he said one night while brushing his teeth, like it was meant for someone who couldn't stand upright. The house had a quietness to it, not the peaceful kind, but the sort that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. There was no visible damage, no smell, no signs of age. But the air inside felt thick, like a room sealed too long. Amanda sometimes cracked open the French doors in the dining room just to breathe easier. The first odd thing happened 2 weeks after they moved in. They were sitting in the living room late on a Saturday, watching a documentary. The audio started to garble just for a second, and the screen went to static. Then came a deep, strained breath, like someone exhaling right into their ears. Both of them jumped. Then the screen flickered back, like nothing had happened. "I heard that," Amanda said, staring at the screen. "Yeah," Jalen said, sitting very still. "That wasn't the TV." They checked the speakers. Nothing. The system wasn't even connected to the internet. Jalen chalked it up to interference. Amanda tried to laugh, but she didn't smile. 3 nights later, while working late in her home office, Amanda saw movement in the hallway mirror. Just a blur, a shadow passing quickly. She froze, turned to look behind her, and saw nothing. The hallway was still, quiet, but the air was ice cold. She walked to the thermostat. It read 74 degrees. At first, they didn't connect these events to Pryor. Why would they? He died in 2005. The house had changed hands 3 times since then. But the longer they lived there, the more Amanda began to read about his final years. His struggle with multiple sclerosis, the fire that nearly killed him, the stories of people seeing him talk to himself in mirrors, of strange visitors coming at night long after he stopped working. One neighbor, an older woman named Rosalind, approached Amanda during a morning walk. "You bought Richard's place?" she said with a smile. "You know, he used to scream out at night. Laughed, too. Crazy laughs. Sometimes the lights would flicker when he did. You ever hear anything?" Amanda shook her head. "No, nothing like that." Rosalind nodded, eyes still on her. "Well, if you ever do, don't answer back." Amanda didn't sleep well that night. The days were warm but carried an off-season stillness, a kind of muted light that made shadows seem thicker, less temporary. In the mornings, Amanda opened every window she could reach. The air inside had grown heavier, not in temperature, something else, like the rooms were holding their breath. The scent of the house shifted, subtly but unmistakably. It was no longer the bland smell of fresh paint and new furniture. It smelled lived in now, but not by them. Jalen said nothing at first, though Amanda noticed the way he lingered longer in the garage, how he started working from the kitchen table instead of his upstairs office. When asked, he shrugged it off. "The light's better down here." But it wasn't. The kitchen was windowless on one side and dim by noon. His sketchpad sat closed most of the time. He wasn't drawing. The first time Amanda truly felt afraid was on a Thursday, just past midnight. She'd gotten up to get water. The hallway light had been left on, casting long yellow bars across the hardwood. As she stepped from the bedroom into the hall, she paused. It felt like someone was standing just out of view, right around the corner still, expectant. Not a presence pressing toward her, but one waiting to be noticed. She stayed still. There was no sound, but she felt something move across the air like a whisper against her collarbone. A tickle without breath. When she turned the corner, there was nothing, but the hallway mirror was fogged, as if someone had breathed on it. She didn't tell Jalen. 3 nights later, they hosted 2 friends Marcus and Letty for dinner. They ate on the patio. Everything felt normal until Letty excused herself to use the bathroom. A few minutes passed, then a few more. Marcus looked up from his glass of wine. "She okay in there?" Amanda stood. "I'll check." She found Letty standing in the hallway, motionless, facing the mirror. Amanda's voice was low. "Everything all right?" Letty flinched, visibly. She looked back at Amanda, confused, her face pale. I thought I heard someone laughing." Amanda's mouth dried. "From where?" Letty pointed at the mirror. "I thought it was you, actually. It sounded like, I don't know, like a laugh being held in someone's throat. But low, tired, old." Amanda forced a smile. "The acoustics in here are weird. Maybe from outside." Letty didn't respond. She stared into the glass a moment longer. Then she rubbed her arms, like the cold had reached her bones, and walked into the bathroom without another word. That night, Amanda pulled out her laptop and began reading. She found old interviews, archived photos, scattered blog posts from people who had visited the house during Pryor's later years. The stories weren't sensational. There were no claims of ghosts or possessions, but there were details, consistent ones. Visitors spoke of how often Pryor sat in silence, staring into the living room mirror. One man, a nurse, said he once found him laughing quietly with no one else in the room. Another recalled the comedian whispering under his breath, then turning suddenly and saying, "Don't let him in. You hear me? Don't." Amanda closed her laptop at 2:11 a.m. She didn't sleep. By the following week, the laughing had started. Not loud, not frequent, but real. Always low, always far off, like it was coming from the corner of a room or through a wall. Not playful. It was strained, as if it hurt to make the sound. It came when the house was quiet during the slow build of twilight, or long after midnight when only the occasional car passed by the hill. Jalen heard it first while brushing his teeth. He stepped out into the hall with the brush still in his mouth, foam trailing his lip. Amanda had been sitting in bed. He stared at her, toothbrush in hand. "You didn't hear that?" She shook her head. "What?" "A laugh. Downstairs." They went together, barefoot, checking the kitchen, the garage, the den. Every light they turned on felt like it only made things worse. The corners deepened. The mirrors gleamed. The silence afterward was so total it rang. They made it a rule after that. No mirrors after midnight. But it didn't help. The den, once their favorite room, became unbearable. The air always felt warmer there, heavier. The mirror on the far wall, the one Jalen had complained about early on, had grown darker in its reflection. It still worked, it still showed what was there, but it seemed off. Amanda described it once as like a memory of the room instead of the room itself. One evening, as they sat quietly eating dinner, Amanda finally broke the silence. "We should sell." Jalen stared at her. His fork paused midway. "We just got here," he said. She nodded, slow. "I know." He hesitated, then said, "You felt it too." It wasn't a question. Amanda didn't answer. Jalen looked away toward the den. "You ever wonder if maybe he's still here?" he said quietly. "Not like as a ghost, but like some part of him. Stuck." Amanda stared at him. He didn't look back. "I've been dreaming about him," Jalen added, voice almost too soft to hear. "He doesn't say anything, just sits in that room, laughing." Amanda didn't touch her food again that night. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. By late September, the light had changed. Days were shorter, the sun slipping faster behind the hills, leaving the house suspended in amber before dropping it into sudden shadow. In those hours, just before dark, the house seemed to breathe differently. Amanda began calling it the drop-off, that moment when the sunlight left the walls and the air inside went still, charged, as if something unseen had just entered. They stopped opening the windows. It didn't help. The weight in the rooms was no longer just a feeling. The sounds had changed, too. It wasn't only the laugh anymore. There were footsteps, uneven, slow, pauses in the rhythm, as if the person limped or dragged something behind them. Once, Amanda heard a soft clatter in the bathroom upstairs, like pill bottles being knocked over. Jalen heard whispers, not words, just breath, pressed right against his ear. On a cold, windless Thursday, Amanda drove alone to a small bookstore in Burbank, one she remembered from a podcast interview with an author who researched haunted properties. It wasn't an occult shop, just an old place with faded carpet, ceiling fans that never stopped spinning, and a quiet back room that smelled of paper and dust. She approached the counter with a folded note in her hand. The address of their house, the year it was built, and the names of the previous owners she'd managed to find online. The man behind the counter, in his late 50s with gray sideburns and a Dodgers cap, read the note once, then again. He didn't smile. He didn't ask questions. "You're not the first one to ask," he said finally. Couple in the 90s came in. Before that, some guy in 87 said he saw someone walking through the hall with no feet, just legs, floating above the floor. Amanda said nothing. The man looked up at her. People think Richard Pryor brought something into that house. But it wasn't him. It was already there. Amanda felt cold even under her jacket. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "House was built cheap. Late 60s. Contractor did half the homes in that area. One of the first owners, an editor from Paramount, had a breakdown. Heard voices. Stopped sleeping. They found him staring into the fireplace, muttering about the second one inside." Amanda frowned. "Second what?" The man folded the paper and handed it back. "There's something in that house that doesn't like being ignored." Back home, Amanda didn't tell Jalen what the man said. She wasn't sure she believed it herself. But that night, she stood in the den, alone with all the lights off. The mirror reflected her shape clearly. But the space around her, the room in the glass, looked wrong. There was something sitting on the couch behind her. A shape, not fully formed. Like smoke in the shape of a man. She turned. Nothing. She looked back at the mirror. Gone. But the next morning, she found 3 deep scratches on the wood paneling behind the couch. Long, thin, parallel, like fingernails. Jalen said it was the cat from next door. But they both knew they'd never seen a cat inside. The tension between them grew, but in a strange, quiet way. Not fights, not shouting, just long silences. One watching TV while the other stayed outside, smoking. Both afraid to be alone. Both afraid to say why. One evening, Jalen came into the kitchen and asked, "Do you think he was scared?" "Who?" "Pryor. When he lived here. You think he knew something was wrong? Or did it just sit with him?" Amanda looked at him carefully. "What do you mean, sit with him?" Jalen shrugged. Like it never really jumped out at him. It just followed. Laughed when he laughed. Cried when he cried. Got into him. Amanda opened the fridge but didn't take anything out. She shut the door, leaned against it, and whispered, "I think it's still here." That night, she tried to record it. She placed her phone in the den, recording audio from midnight until dawn. They both went to bed, neither sleeping. At 5:37 a.m., Amanda retrieved the phone. 6 hours of quiet white noise. Then, at 3:42 a.m., a single sound. Then the sound of slow, labored breathing. Then a voice. Not a sentence. Just a fragment. "Don't let him back in." Jalen left the house the next day. Said he needed a break, just a few nights at a hotel in Culver City. Amanda didn't argue. She stayed behind, telling herself someone needed to keep watch. The first night alone, the mirror fogged while she slept. The second night, She woke up to the sound of someone walking in circles on the roof. The third night, the laughter came from her own mouth. She wasn't dreaming. She was sitting up, wide awake, and something was laughing through her. It didn't sound like her. It was deeper, coarser, like it came from a throat that had been burned. Amanda didn't tell Jalen what happened that night. She didn't tell anyone. She spent most of the next day outside, sitting on the back steps, staring at the dry grass that lined the hillside. The city spread below, fogged in light and sound, normal and distant. Here, the silence returned quickly. The air felt heavier than it should have. When she finally went back inside, it was dusk. The drop-off had begun. The den was darker than the rest of the house, though no lights had been turned on yet. She didn't enter it, just stood in the doorway watching the mirror. It didn't fog this time. Pulsed. Not visibly, no movement, but Amanda felt it, the way one feels when standing too close to someone in the dark. She walked in, sat down on the couch, faced the mirror. "I'm not afraid of you," she said aloud. "I live here now." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the kind that absorbs things, as if the house had swallowed her words whole. Later that night, Jalen called. She let it ring out. At 1:12 a.m., Amanda returned to the mirror. She stood in front of it and turned off the lights. Her reflection remained but slightly delayed. It blinked a second too late, tilted its head just after she did. She smiled. So did the reflection. Then it stopped. The reflection stood still. Amanda moved her hand. Nothing. Her breath caught. She leaned forward. The face in the glass was hers but tired. Burned out. The eyes were red around the edges. Not with tears, but with sleeplessness. Her skin looked wrong, like plastic stretched over something that had given up pretending to be alive. She turned on the light. The reflection snapped back to normal. She left the den and locked the door behind her. The following morning, Amanda visited a local historian who specialized in Los Angeles homes. His office was inside a restored craftsman house just off Franklin, filled with dusty file boxes, topo maps, and cracked leather binders. He pulled the parcel records she asked for. "Your place was built in '68, he said. "But the land had something on it before that. Small bungalow. Burned down. Owner died inside. Never officially identified." Amanda frowned. "So the land has a death on record?" He nodded. "Yeah, but people die everywhere. Doesn't mean it's haunted." She stared at the file, then back at him. "What about Richard Pryor? Did anything strange happen to him in that house?" The historian hesitated. "Pryor had a rough life. Addiction. A mess. He spent his last years in that house mostly secluded. But it wasn't just health. A couple neighbors said they'd hear shouting at night. Laughter. But not the kind that made you want to join in. The kind that made you shut your window." Amanda left the file unopened. On the final day, Jalen returned. He looked thinner, pale. His eyes held something fragile like glass under pressure. "I want to sell," he said, setting his bag down in the hallway. Amanda nodded. "Okay." They didn't argue. They didn't discuss the logistics. They sat on the living room floor, backs against the couch, lights off, drinking in the late afternoon hush. "Do you think he was ever alone?" Amanda asked. "Pryor." She nodded. Jalen thought for a while, then said, "Not really. I think something stayed with him." Neither of them spoke again for hours. That night, Amanda had a dream or something like one. She was walking through the house, barefoot. The lights off, but the hallways lit by something bluish and cold. She moved quietly, slowly. She stopped in front of the den door. It was open. Inside, the mirror was lit from behind, casting her reflection in perfect detail. She stepped toward it, drawn not by curiosity but by a quiet necessity. The air was thick, sweet with the smell of smoke and old cologne. She sat on the couch. In the mirror, her reflection was not alone. There was a man behind her. Not Pryor, not someone she knew. A silhouette. His arms rested on the back of the couch, wide as if to embrace. He leaned in toward her ear, but didn't speak. He smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, just smiled like someone who'd waited long enough. She opened her mouth to scream but woke before the sound came out. Jalen was already up, standing in the hallway with his suitcase in hand. "I called a realtor," he said. "They'll come tomorrow." "You okay?" Amanda looked at him. "I think it wants us to stay," she whispered. He shook his head. "We're leaving." "Amanda, look at me. We're leaving." But when he left to load the car, she lingered. She stepped into the den one last time. The mirror was fogged, just lightly, and this time, there were two sets of fingerprints trailing across the glass. One large, one small. From the inside, she ran. She left the door open. The house on Northridge now sits on the market. Empty, staged, beautifully photographed in all the right light. But the den door won't stay open. Agents report hearing faint laughter when showing the place. And every few weeks, the cleaning staff finds fingerprints on the mirror despite no one entering that room. Some say the spirit of Richard Pryor lingers, restless. But those who know better don't blame him. They know there was something already there before he ever moved in. And whatever it is, still waiting. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.